What's going on, YouTubers? It's your boy G Consciousness in the building, and you are now live. Y'all know what it is. We back in it early with it, family. Well, not too early, but early enough. Let me check with my sound and see if my sound all right. I'm around this clock. I'm around the clock. I plays no games when it comes to this. We got another brother over here tripping. So we got to deal with the folly today. Let's check this. Let's see if my sound is putting out right. Mic check. See if my sound is putting out right. I'm good. Let me share this to those that are out there. A lot of people at work, but hey, we still gonna make it happen. We still gonna make it happen. All right, so we gotta. Okay, so it's there. All right, so we're talking about Zechariah 14 today. I had a response to the video today from one of the guys who we know dearly. I ain't gonna say his name, but he failed miserably in teaching eschatology. That's because he got to put that black eschatology on it. He got to put that spin on it. You know what I'm saying? And that's what actually happened here. So we gonna deal with some of that brother's information today and really go in on it and see what the deal is. I appreciate the brother Lamar for sharing the post. Peace and blessings to you, brother. So as always, the great cover up, the great black eschatology, as Israel doctrine would say. You know what I'm saying? Where these guys got to put a spin on the doctrine so it can better fit them rather than what the text is actually saying. That's what we see. So this is titled Black Hebrew Israelites Fails in Teaching Eschatology Miserably. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to expound on Zechariah 14 today. I had a response to my video last night. And so I guess the brother got up early this morning and wanted to go at it. You know what I'm saying? So we definitely got to deal with some of this brother's information. Now, I don't understand how this brother moved from a non-preterist to a full preterist in this black eschatology that he teaching. Or this, because that's what it is, basically. You know what I'm saying? So let's really just key in on some things in Zechariah 14. We brought out some history last night. He never addressed that really to the fullest, you know, concerning Joel chapter 3. You know, this jumping around, this super sloppy in the text overall. You know what I'm saying? It's overall just sloppy. Now, Zechariah 14, right? Let me show you what this brother did so y'all can understand what's really going on here. It says, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil should be divided in the midst of thee, right? For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. Now, first off, I don't know if this brother don't understand, but in 70 AD, this was not fulfilled. But as surely as Boo Boo stink, this brother tried to give this verse right here as full preterists do, saying that it's concerning. I'm about to get up with Kufu. So this brother is saying that 70 AD is what this is talking about. This is talking about 70 AD. I mean, just all the way ridiculous just to fit this black mentality or this black eschatology. You know what I'm saying? That's what's going on here. Let me check my chat room. Say peace to the brothers in the chat room. I don't. Tony Ted, what's going on? Peace, brother. Cherry Love, what's going on? Brian, what's going on? I'm gonna get with you, Brian. I seen your inbox. What's going on? Irvin, good morning to you, brother, as well as Sister Cherry. What's going on, Clinton? How you feeling, brother? So, I listened to the brother this morning, right? And somehow, some way, he took Zechariah 14 and took the position of a full preterist and equated this to the very 70 AD event. I don't know how he did it, but he did something wrong, but he made it and tried to fit it in there and then try to do it real slick. We're going to deal with that. Now, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. Now, we know in 70 AD, this didn't happen. All nations was not in Jerusalem battling at all, matter of fact. Now, did you have the Roman Empire that consisted of some of those nations within the Roman Empire? Yes, but not all nations. That's just bottom line. Because the very scripture that we see this talking about all nations coming to battle is Armageddon. That's clear. Where everybody's going to come up to battle. I don't care if it's the Chinese, the people of the East, or whoever, they coming up to battle. The governments of the world is coming up to battle against Christ. Right? And coming up to surround that land. But somehow, some way, this brother gave this verse to 70 AD. I don't know how he did it, right? What's this about? Oh man, I can't do it, man. Oh man, I can't, man. Y'all too much for me, man. Man, they got these brothers in fringes with Timbs on. I don't know if this is New York, but this is pure One West foolery. Let me get through this because I got 30 minutes to do this, but this is just ridiculous. Man, I just got a picture of these brothers in One West. They got on these garments supposed to be priestly garments with Timbs on, man. Oh, man. This is pure foolishness right here. And then what's crazy about it is because ever since I pointed out about these guys, it's been going around ever since I pointed out how they be dressed up and this stuff, be wearing Nikes and these boots and stuff. Like everybody they've been pointing it out. And so like this person just pointed out these shoes that this brother got on and said, "What are those?" And then look, they put scribble scrabble around them so you can look on it and say, "What are those?" Those are Timbs. Those are Timberlands. These brothers out here, man, talking about they got these holy garments on and Nikes and Timbs and Jordans, man, and all types of stuff, man. Looking real silly with walking around with curtains on with belt buckles and Timbs on. This is just foolishness. But anyways, if you want a good laugh, man, all you got to do is go down there on 125th or either down there up in New York or either Dallas, man. You get to see these brothers wearing these silly garments, man. You get you a good laugh out, man. Only thing they missing is a camel out there. That's it, man. Or either sometimes they be out there lined up with all that leather on. They ain't got no bikes, no Harley Davidsons or nothing, man. Just out there, man, with knives and swords and all types of stuff, man. You think it's look like it's finna get off to a bar fight out there. They got so much leather on. Friends with limbos or Timbos on. My brother got the fringes with the Timbos on. What's happening? They out there, man, with them Timbs and man, and them garments on. Them brothers out there. Yeah, man. If you're gonna go all the way in with, at least you're gonna, put you on some Middle East attire, or some sandals or something like that. You know what I'm saying? That might help you out. You can even make you can make some sandals out of fringes. I'm saying you can take some of the little fringe strings and get you some little bottoms or something. And they cut you out some little cardboard and the shape of your feet, and then tie some little fringes on it, man, or glue some little fringes on it, man, and you good. You good, man. You can even make you some little, take some of that little leather y'all be using off them couches, man, and make you some shoes. You know what I'm saying? Just do something like that. Do something different, man. But anyways, let's really see what's going on. So this brother, he took this, and I don't know how he did it, but he did it. Now it says, the houses should be rifled, and the women ravished. Now, mind you not, this also happened in the historical times. So when you look at Israel, when you look at the Assyrian Empire, and also when you look at Babylon, when they came to the kingdom of Judah, right? And they trenched the city about, and we know that they took all of those people away. But they left a residue of the people that was in the city. Now, in 70 AD, that didn't happen. Matter of fact, we got an account of Josephus actually saying that didn't happen, that they took all of the people about the city. You know what I'm saying? And so, I don't know how they get to the point, because even when we look at Josephus, watch what Josephus says. This is the destruction of Jerusalem. I think this is book. What book is this? I think this is book 7. I believe it's book 7, chapter 1, right? It was basically how the entire city of Jerusalem was demolished, excepting 3 towers, and how Titus commended his soldiers in a speech made to them and distributed rewards to them, and dismissed many of them. Now watch what it says. Now, as soon as the army had no more people to slay or to plunder, notice he said that. Now, as soon as the army had no more people to slay or to plunder, because there remained none to be the objects of their fury, for they would not have spared any had there remained any other work to be done, right? Caesar gave orders that they should now demolish the entire city and temple, but should leave as many of the towers standing as were of the greatest eminency, or however you say, eminency, that is, Phalalusis and Hipparchus and Mani, or however you say it, in so much of the wall as enclosed the city on the west side. It says this wall was spared in order to afford a camp for such a where to lie in garrison, as were the towers also spared in other order to demonstrate the posterity what kind of city it was. So it's clear, right? Now watch what it says. It says the Roman valor has subdued, but for all the rest of the wall, it was so thoroughly laid, even with the ground, by those that dug it up to the foundation, that there was left nothing to make those that came hither believe it had ever been inhabited. Right? This was the end which Jerusalem came to by the madness of those that were for innovations. So it's clear that Josephus even mentioned that his historical account that they left nothing in Jerusalem but destroyed it, but 3 towers, basically, right? But let's look at this right here, though, and see what it says. Because if you're trying to make 70 AD to line up with Zechariah 14, you just all the way out of pocket. You didn't left your stance of non-preterism to full preterism, because that's their view. I'm gonna get at you in a minute. I see your brother calling, but I'm gonna have to call you back. So that's their view, right? So let's look at this. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee, right?
For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity. We just read in 70 AD, everything went forth into captivity, and what did not go forth in captivity was slain, destroyed, right? Leave nothing but these three towers. This is from Josephus, 1st century AD historian. And it says, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. In other words, there's going to remain a remnant in the city, right? It's going to be there. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations. Now, hold on for a minute. He's telling you that once they come in and they destroy almost down to almost nothing as they try to do in 70 AD, Christ gonna come back. He on the scene with the lean, right? And the thug that is talking about there is true and holy unto God, acronym. So he on the scene thugging, true, holy unto God. That's what that's talking about. He on the scene, right? I'm just being silly, but you can get my drift a little bit. So anyways, let's continue on. Then shall the Lord go forth. So this proceedeth after, right? Because to be honest, they would have destroyed everything. But Christ comes and saves these guys. Then shall the Lord go forth to fight against those nations as he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem, right? So Christ is going to come and going to save these guys, right? We see that. We understand that. We can see what's going to take place. This book is almost hand in hand with Matthew 24 and somewhat of Luke. Now, in Luke, the brother got to explaining how 70 AD is going to take place, where they're going to be led away captive into all the nations, right? And Jerusalem is going to be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. Now, let's look at something. Because we know that, number one, is that historically, Revelations was written in 90 AD. So therefore, Luke talks about the destruction of the temple. Matthew talks about the abomination of desolations. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, Matthew 24 and 15, standing in the holy place where it ought not to be. And we know that's talking about Daniel 9 and 27. And also Revelation chapter 13, when he sets up his image, and also concerning Revelations 11. We know that at that time, we can see that this is not in 70 AD, according to what the scriptures are saying. We know that in 70 AD, the Romans was gathered around them, but was that all nations? Did they leave some? Was the whole city taken? No. I mean, yes. We just read Josephus, the historian, said it was taken. Does the scripture teach that it was taken? Yes, it does. Definitely does. So let's continue on, because this cannot be talking about 70 AD. Why did this brother go here? Why did he get the scriptures mixed up? I don't understand why he did that. But it's just another form of some type of black Hebrew Israelite eschatology to confirm that they are these Hebrew Israelites, which is just all the way sloppy, right? No investigation, no history. I'm showing you the biblical text, and I'm lining up history behind it. This brother went to Joel 3 and tried to say that that's the Atlantic slave trade, or either 70 AD. Whoa, wait for a minute, brother. Last I checked, the Romans is not the Grecians, even though they call it the Greco-Roman era. But it says that Tyre and the Zidonians sold them unto the Grecians. When did that happen? 8th century and 7th century AD, according to Joel in the book of Ezekiel, as I took the brother to last night. Ezekiel 27. So that happened during that time. One may say, well, the Grecians came in 300. No, they've been already there. You just didn't know it, but the scripture said that they was there because they called them Yavin. I took y'all to the text last night and showed y'all that the Grecian word there is Yavin, and as well as Ezekiel 20, what's called. Stop texting me while I'm doing this what's called. Nah, bruh. I know exactly what you said. Stop playing. But anyways, number one is this is, you playing games. You said that 78, you said that this scripture is Zechariah, as well as Joel chapter 3, is talking about 70 AD. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you said. I watched you say it, and we're going to go back to it since you're playing games. If you want to play games with it, we're going to go back to it. Hold on for a minute, because it's saying my computer is not charging for some reason. Even if you try to say after 70 AD, Kevin, and then you try to say, and let me cut this phone down. So, even if you try to say after, you still said the Atlantic slave trade. That's what you was in references talking about. But you tried to really say both of them. I heard you, bro. I listened good. But just to put 70 AD with Zechariah 14, it's just plain full preterism. You're trying to be slick with it, but you got caught, right? So, watch what it says. And his feet shall stand in the Mount of Olives. You try to make this two separate events. But you know that the whole chapter is talking about the coming of Christ, the second coming, and what's going to take place in that day. You acting like them fleeing to the mountains is the first time this event ever happened when any nation ever came up against Israel. It happened in 70 AD. It happened before 70 AD because that was the place that they always fled when they was fleeing as fugitives from extortioners. That was their fleeing place. So they always fled to the mountains of Jordan. Always fled that way, or they fled down into Egypt because those was the ways that they was running. So then you took Joel and you didn't do the history on it, and you didn't realize that Joel was talking about past tense when it says that ye have sold them unto the Grecians. Well, when did this happen in history? We can give account for it historically and biblically. So biblically it's still historically, but if you want extra biblical sources, we can do that too, brother. However you want to rumble, we can rumble. I'm with it. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at Joel 3, I already told y'all, brothers, y'all should listen closely when these brothers be talking, because Joel 3, when it's talking about Tyre and the Zidonians, go check out Ezekiel 27, and you're going to see Tyre and the Zidonians selling people or selling persons for trade, and also in bed with Israel in commerce and trade. That's clear. That's clear. And they're going to be judged for that. So he judged them for that, right? As I said, Joel was written in the 8th century. The book of Ezekiel was written in the 7th century, I believe. Definitely. Yes, it was. So bottom line is we got a problem with these brothers messing up the scriptures. So then he say it's all prophecy. No, bruh. Joel is partial prophecy. So there's partial prophecy there, but it's still concerning the day of the Lord that he's going to repay them for what they did in the past. That's clear, fam. I have no problem with that. But just to say that that was a future event concerning them selling Tyre and also Zidonians selling them into the Grecians. Wait for a minute, bro. Do you not understand historically? We can account for that in Ezekiel 27, as I stated, in extra biblical sources state the same thing. You out of pocket, fam. Let's continue reading. Now, and his feet shall stand that day upon the Mount of Olives, right? Now, watch what this says. I don't care what you say. It's on record on what you said, bro. It's on record what you said. Now, we know that Christ is coming with his armies. He's coming. He's coming with his armies. Watch what it says. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight. Then when? After we see, man, I gotta get this thing right. Hold on, y'all. For my computer cut off. This thing is not, it ain't charging. Hold on real quick, because my computer gonna shut off if I don't get this up and charging. And I thought it was charging. But yeah, this brother is out of pocket, all the way out of pocket. We're gonna deal with this brother. What you got going on? Alright, so yeah, let me hurry up, plug this up, get this plugged up so we don't run out of battery. Okay, so let's see if this gonna charge. All right, so let's see, can we get a charge here? Yeah, so the brother is definitely out of pocket, and if he's shooting missiles, he's out of rockets. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what the brother is dealing with, but he ain't dealing with what this Bible is talking about. Let's continue and move on, right? Because we ain't got that much time. We're gonna make it count though. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations, and when he fought in the day of battle, and his feet shall stand that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem, the east, right? Now, clearly, we see that, well, I was just trying to be funny and just trying to rhyme, whether it's missiles, rockets, or whatever. You can, missiles you can get technical if you want to, but they both launch, don't they? Missiles launch and rockets launch, so it don't even make a difference. You can get technical if you want to, but you should have got technical when you was breaking down these scriptures instead of coming in a full preterism type of mannerism. You know what I'm saying? You can get technical if you want to. You know what I'm saying? And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, right? For the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal, right? Which we don't know where that's at. Ye shall flee like as ye fled before. Now let me take y'all to something real quick, because I ain't got that much time. But we gonna do the rhythm and rhyme. You know what I'm saying? Let me take you out of something real quick. But once again, he got caught tripping. You would have thought that he was cripping. He got caught tripping and slipping. Watch what it says. Now, Revelations 11. They hate this one. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of God, right? We see also the measuring of the temple of God in Revelation 21, 15 and 16, when it says, and he that talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city and the gates thereof and the wall thereof. So he's given a rod, and he says, measure the temple of God, right? And he also says, he says the altar and them that worship therein. So everything else is measured outside of that. And I mean, it's not measured. Measure the temple of God, them that worship therein, and the altar, right? That's what's going to be measured. But watch what he says. But the court which is without the temple, leave out and measure it not. Don't measure that. Why? Watch what he says. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. So that's 3.5 years. and I will give power unto my witnesses. The only reason why the temple is protected and those that worship therein in the altar is because of the two witnesses. That's why. When you read Revelation 11, it's telling you why. But when the ministry of the 2 or 3 witnesses is over with, after 3.5 years, guess what? Goodbye, temple. Because guess who coming into that temple to come and get that, come and take over and stop those sacrifices that's mentioned in Daniel chapter 9 and 27. He should confirm a covenant with he should confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. Then in the midst of that week, he gonna break that covenant and cause the sacrifice to cease. He gonna allow them to build a temple, and he gonna allow this false peace. But when those 2 witnesses are killed, guess what happens? He coming into that temple to set up his abomination of desolations. And in 2 Thessalonians 2 and 5 and 2 and 4, 2 Thessalonians 2 and 4 tells you he's going to stand in that temple and say that he is God. Right? That's clear in the scriptures. I don't know why the brother can't see that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why he can't see it. And many at that time, according to Matthew 24 and 15, will run out of that place when they see the abomination of desolation being spoken of Daniel, when they see something standing in the holy place that ought not. That holy place that he's talking about is him setting up that image in that sacred place in the holies of holies. He's going to sit in there as well as stand in there according to the very text that we see in 2 Thessalonians 2 and 5. 2 Thessalonians 2 and 4, I'm sorry. And also Matthew 24 and 15, the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, when they're going to flee over into Jordan. And then also Daniel chapter 9 and 27. Then you go to Daniel 9 and also 8, 9 and 8. So let's continue and watch what it says. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,203 days, clothed in sackcloths, right? So let's look at this and show you something. Let's jump down. It says, and when they should, this is verse 7, and when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them, right? And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, where our Lord Jesus was crucified. Why is it called Egypt? Because of the whoredoms, and Egypt was known for worshiping many gods. That's why Jerusalem will be called Egypt, because they will take on the very gods and worship many gods that Egypt worshiped. But why is it called sodomy? Because guess what? This ain't nothing that was new to Israel, Jerusalem. They was called sodomites in the Old Testament. Read the book of Isaiah. They did worse than the nations that was around them. Not only that, guess what? Not only that, it's called Sodom because of homosexuality. So when it says spiritually, it's because they're taking on this spiritual mindset of homosexuality and also committing whoredoms, as it talks about in the book of Revelations 13 and also Revelation 17, right? Committing whoredoms with the mystery Babylon religion, right? So watch what it says. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies, right? Notice it says kindreds, tongues, and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in the grave. Now, this is the nations, right? Now watch what it says. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, make mercy, and shall send gifts one to another, because these 2 prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth, right? And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood up upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying, Come up hither. And they ascended up into heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. Now watch what it says. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell. And in the earthquake was slain of men 7,000, and the remnant which were affrighted. In other words, those that were left were affrighted and gave glory to the God of heaven. This is clear, fam, that this very verse is concerning what we see is going to take place of those people that's going to be in the land. This is Revelation 11. This was written 90 AD, brother. And if you say anything other, then you're going to show me that you are a full preterist. And therefore, let the games begin. Because now you're going to have to bump heads with Israel doctrine and other people. Now, you might hold the position, and you might hold the position of Josh, which is a partial preterism, and he say that all Matthew 24 and 15 has Matthew 24 has been fulfilled. He holds that position. He says he's a partial, but that position is not right. That is wrong. That is wrong. So saying that Zechariah 14 has been fulfilled and then mixing up Luke when the scattering of the Gentiles to the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled is just wrong. Jerusalem has been trodden down of the Gentiles ever since Israel left that place, and either actually before that when they left that place, because during that time we've seen that the Romans was basically over those guys. Edomites was over those guys. Arabs was over those guys. So they were kicked up out of the land. Josephus made mention, wasn't no partial or nothing. All of them was out of there, fam. It was gone, right? So let's look at some more stuff and bring out some things, right? Now, what's crazy is this is, if you go to BibleHub.com, right, it'll actually tell you what's really going on here. When you read some of the commentaries, I suggested these brothers start looking at this information. That way they can really understand what's really going on here. And they won't do it to save the life of them. You know what I'm saying? They won't do it because they got to teach this black Hebrew Israelite cultish information just to reserve Israel. You see Israel doctrine over there, black eschatology, black theology. You know what I'm saying? All of this is just black. Why? Because they in the flesh. That's why. In the flesh theology. That's what that is. In the flesh eschatology. That's what that is. That's what they teaching, right? Now, it's clear in 70 AD. I mean, it's clear that these guys are saying, well, these guys can't be Jews because of this and that, because of the wickedness. Whoa, the Bible said they're going to be wicked in Romans chapter 11. When it says that he's a deliverer should come out of Zion to turn ungodliness away from Jacob. Then also Ezekiel 37, I believe, not 37, Ezekiel, I want to say, what is it? I think it's Ezekiel, man. But it says that I think it's Ezekiel 30 and 27, where it says he will bring them out of the wilderness, into the wilderness, and speak softly to them to bring them into the bonds of the covenant. I believe that's it. So watch what it says. Let's look at some of this. This is pulpit commentary. You can go to Bible Hub. Something as simple as Bible Hub can give you some information on this. It says how this shall come to pass is not, is now shown. But I will gather all nations. Right? Quote. God uses the Gentile nations as his instruments in the trial of his people. They are the fires by which he refines and purifies his elect. Joel 3 and 2, 9 through 11 also too. The city shall be taken. The outrages offered to the captivity city are such as indicated in the case of Babylon. Now, in the case of Babylon, it says that the city, it will not come to an end. In other words, God would leave a remnant during the Babylonian captivity. That actually happened, right? Now, this is how this is referred to. This is what this guy is saying. He says, Isaiah 13:6, Lamentations 5:11, talking about half of the city. The term half must not be pressed as if it contradicted the mention of 2/3 that were to perish according to the prediction of Zechariah 13:8. That he didn't look at that though. It is a mere rhetorical expression, or it may apply to the city alone, while the other referred to is the whole land should not be cut off, right? So in the former captivity, all the people were carried away, and this capture of the city a remnant should be left therein. It is plain from this statement that the prophecy cannot apply to the destruction of the city by the Romans. For according to the account of Josephus, right, as I read earlier, the city itself was razed to the ground, and all the inhabitants were either put to the sword or sold for slaves, right? Even which that's what they say, right? So it says, so let's look at Gill's exposition, right, of the entire Bible, right? It says, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, meaning not the Romans in the time of Vespasian, for they were not all nations, nor did a part of the city only go into captivity then, but the whole, nor did any remain in it. It seems rather to refer to the gathering of the kings of the earth to the battle of the Lord Almighty at Armageddon, Revelation 16:4, right? So he goes to Revelation 16:4, and he says when it talks about the great day of God Almighty. So this is what this is talking about, you know. So then let's look at it. He said, unless it may be thought better to interpret it of the vast numbers out of several nations, the Turk will bring against Jerusalem to dispose of the Jews of it, by whom it will be again inhabited in the latter days. See Ezekiel 38:4, right? So they talk about that, right? But bottom line is just to show you that this is clear that this is not talking about the destruction of the Rome, right? It says, now let's look at it. It says, and the residue of this people shall not be cut off from the city. There will be a remnant according to the election of grace. Now we see that in Romans chapter 11, right? The city, the church, shall not be wholly extinct. Christ will reserve a seed for himself in those very worst of times. Now we just read about a remnant was affrighted and gave glory unto God when the earthquake hit in Revelations 11, which was written in 90 AD or after 90 AD, right? It says, this cannot refer to the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans, for then all the inhabitants of the city were cut off or carried captive, and none was left. But if literally to be understood must refer to what will be when the army of God shall come against it in the latter days. Now most people has this as the battle of Armageddon or the battle of Magog and Gog during the time of the millennium after the reign, the releasing of the 1,000-year reign after the releasing of Satan, right? So let's really look at what's going on here. You know what I'm saying? And see. Let's look at James, what he said. James Fawcett Brown, Bible commentary. Gather all nations, etc. The prophecy seems literal. Compare Joel 3:2. If Antichrist be the leader of the nations, it seems inconsistent with the statement that he will at this time be setting in the temple of God as it seems inconsistent as Jerusalem. Thus, Antichrist outside will be made to besiege. Thus, the Antichrist outside will be made to besiege Antichrist within the city, but difficulties do not set aside revelations. The event will clear up seeming difficulties. Compare the completed movements with Daniel 11:1-4. Half the city, half the residue in Zechariah 13:8 and 9. It is 2/3 that perish, and the third escapes. There, however, is in all the land. Here it is half the city, 2/3 of the whole perish. 1/3 survives. One of the city's citizens are laid captive. The residue are not cut off. Perhaps too we ought to translate not the residue, whatever. So I don't really know what this guy James is talking about, but I had to look in that a little bit deeper. But it says, this is Matthew Henry commentary. The Lord Jesus often stood upon the Mount of Olives when on earth. He ascended from thence to heaven, and then desolations and distress came upon the Jewish nations. Such is the view taken of it figuratively, but many consider it as a notice of events yet unfulfilled, and that it relates to troubles of which we cannot now form a full idea. Every believer being related to God as his God may triumph in expectation of Christ coming in power and speaking of Christ. I don't know why Faithful was calling me this, and he know I'm doing the show. I don't know why this brother be doing that. Let me make sure my sound is putting out right. Mic check. Is my
Hold on, you guys.
I'm good. And speaking of Christ, I don't know why Faithful was calling me this, and he know I'm doing the show. You see, I don't know why this brother be doing that.
I did that already. I did that last night.
Putting out right.
All right, cool. So let's look at this right now. Hold on for a minute. I'm gonna have to wait. You gonna have to wait on that because I gotta hurry and get up out of here. You kind of throwing me out for a little bit. Now, I forgot where I was at. So we kind of look at some commentary here and really see what's really going on here. Now, let's go to a plethora of more scriptures before we end that, and then we're gonna go over to something else. Now, let's look at 2 Thessalonians 2:4, as I stated before. It says, and I watched B.A. and them and Zadok Ben Israel try to translate this falsely. And peace to them brothers, but it ain't gonna work, man. Not on my watch. You know, I love y'all brothers, but I watched B.A. try to break this down, and he did terrible. And Armion destroyed him at this when he tried to do it. And the other brothers destroyed him too. His brothers, Robert Reed destroyed him on this when it talks about the little horn and also the Antichrist or the deceiver. Let's look at 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. When did that happen in 70 AD? Didn't happen. Who sat in the temple and showed himself as being God? Who went into that place? Revelation 11 give account of a temple being built. Matthew 24 talks about the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel. And that relates back to 9 and 27 when he takes away the daily sacrifice, the oblations, morning and eve, and the oblations to cause them to cease for the overspreading of desolations on the altar. Because he's being compared to Antiochus and what Antiochus did, the Antichrist, the little horn is. Read Daniel 8 and also 8. Read all the way to 24 when it talks about that he's going to basically make peace, cause people to be in peace or somewhat. When did that happen in 70 AD? Never happened. When was all the nations gathered in 70 AD, and when did the Lord come back and fight? But I guarantee you, the Lord comes back and fight against those nations. Guess when? When he come back his second coming. And why is he coming back to fight against those nations? And even when he does come back, we can see that there are some Jews that's in that land. I just read to y'all in Revelation 11, it says that the remnant was affrighted and also concerning the temple. So you mean to tell me that you're saying that Revelation 11 was fulfilled in 70 AD? Have you lost your mind? So if you say that Revelation 11 was fulfilled in 70 AD, then you would have to say that after the 42 months, right? You have to say that after the 42 months that the Gentiles was given you have to say when they was led away, right? They was led away captivity, right? Once they was led away captivity after 42 months, you would say that the temple was given unto the Gentiles or some type of foolishness or some other type of way. But that's just not the case. You have to relate all of that and try to fit that back into 70 AD when it says that they should be led away captive into all the nations, right? But Matthew 24 talks about a gathering of Israel immediately after the days of those tribulations. Well, when would that gathering take place? That gathering take place when Christ come back, when he comes to gather all of Israel back into the land. But he comes to gather them back to those that are already in the land. We found this happening already. There was a remnant of somewhat that was left in the land during the time of Babylon. They left the remnant into the land. And God didn't make a full end. A remnant was left.
The rest of those people was gathered back into the land after when Cyrus came in. Not everybody came back to the land. Those people are going to come back to the land in the second coming of Christ, though, because the Gentiles are going to bring them back. So they tripping. Let's look at Romans 11:25. For I will not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel, and to the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. So the Israelites is going to be blind until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. When does the fullness of the Gentiles come in? When Christ come and save those people and let them know, I am your deliverer. I saved you in the days of Ahaz, the king, when those nations came against you, and I used Isaiah's sons as a sign to deliver you as an immediate deliverance. But I also talked about another son that was there. And that son was Christ. That as I delivered you then, I will deliver you in the latter days from all of these people that's coming up against you. I am the deliverer. It's him, right? So it says that after the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, he's going to come in and going to deliver them in that land and bring the rest of Israel back into the land and gather them together with those that have already been gathered into the land already. That's clear, man. And so all of Israel should be saved. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion a deliverer and shall turn ungodliness away from Jacob. When is ungodliness turned away from Jacob? When the second coming comes. How do we know that? Because we can look at Zechariah 14 telling you that. It tells you that. Look at Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem should be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So Israel is never going to get full control over their land. It's going to be trodden down until the times of the Gentiles is fulfilled. Even now, the partial Israelites is in the land. They don't have full control of that land. Look at the Dome of the Rock. It's right there. Look at how many people, the bombs and the setting off and the different people that's in the land that's causing the trouble that's in the very land. Yeah, they're going to build the temple according to Revelations 11, 2 Thessalonians 2:4, and also Matthew 24:15, and also Daniel 9:27, when it talks about the abomination of desolations spoken of by Daniel, or he that standeth in the holy place, let them flee into the mountains. Who stood in the holy place in 70 AD? Who stood in the temple of God and said that he was God, or sat down and said that he was God according to 2 Thessalonians 2:4? What temple is it talking about? Revelations 11. What image was being set up of the beast? Revelations 13. What false prophet was there in that temple? Revelations 13 telling you about these things. They're going to build another temple. There's going to be the fourth temple. The first temple was Solomon's temple. The second temple was the temple of Zerubbabel and Ezra. The third temple was Herod's temple, which prepared the breaches and built more enhancements to the temple. And the fourth temple, that temple of Herod's temple was destroyed. The fourth temple is the temple that we see that's going to be in the time in Jacob's troubles, when the Antichrist would confirm a covenant, or the prince will confirm a covenant with them, with many. Matter of fact, will confirm a covenant with many to build this temple. That's the only way they're going to build that temple in that land without some type of war that's going on. It has to be a covenant of peace with many to build the temple. And then after they built the temple, Revelations 11 tells you that 3.5 years within that temple, after the 42 months, he's going to come into that temple when the two witnesses are killed. Revelations 11 tell you, read down. An earthquake is going to happen and cut off parts of the city, and the remnant, the rest, going to give glory unto God. They was frightened by what took place. So it says, and Jerusalem should be trodden down to the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Right? It's going to be trodden down. But if you try to take that and you try to mix that with Revelation 11, you try to say, well, Israel is not going to be in the land, you got a contradiction there. Because we see then in Revelation 11, guess what it says? It says, watch what it says. It says, but the court which is without the temple, leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall be trodden down underfoot 42 months. But we see, if you read at the top, it says, and there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and them that worship therein. So we see that the temple of God will be measured, the altar and those that worship therein. Therefore, they're going to have priests, and they're going to be starting back sacrificing again. But the outer court in the city is given unto the Gentiles. So therefore, there still is going to be partial Israel in that land until the fullness of Israel come back. And that confirms Zechariah 14. When some of the city is going to be destroyed. And those people are going to be struggling and fighting for the longest. And the victory is going to come when the very end comes, when those nations rise up against Israel, all of them. And Christ is going to come back and going to deliver them and come out of Zion and deliver them. And his foot going to stand on the Mount of Olives. And he's going to deliver those people. So this is clear. Let's continue on and watch what it says. And so all Israel should be saved. I'm sorry. And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars and upon the earth, distress of nations with perplexity. That didn't happen in 70 AD. They was led away captive in 70 AD. So this is another event right here that's taking place after Israel is led away into captivity. Now he reverts back because he was asked 3 questions. When should the temple be destroyed? When should be the end time and the sign of your coming? He was asked 3 things. And so Luke and Matthew is going off into those 3 things. They're talking about 70 AD. Luke gets off of really the 70 AD more so. Matthew gets off a little bit farther into saying some of the things of the temple. But Luke goes in definite with it. Where Matthew starts talking about all the way to the end times of what's going to take place and what's going to happen, as well as Luke starting it into 25, talking about what's going to happen. Men's heart failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens should be shaken. And then they shall see the coming of the Son of Man coming with the clouds with great power. That's what this is talking about. That's what this is talking about. So this is clear. Watch what it says, right? This is Revelation 13:5. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy. Who was given his mouth? The beast, the Antichrist. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months, 3.5 years. And he opened his mouth and blasphemed against God. Well, if you go to this very scripture, it takes you back to Daniel. This is clear in the text. But these brothers have not read these things. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And all power was given unto him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. When did that take place? In 70 AD. That did not happen. That did not happen. Israel was judged in 70 AD, not the nations. The nations judged Israel. So when you look at Zechariah 14, let's go back to it and let's read it from the top. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh. In other words, the judgment of the Lord is coming. The second coming of Christ is coming. And thy spoil should be divided in the midst of thee. Watch what he says, verse 2. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. And the city shall be taken, and the house is rifled, and the women ravished. And half of the city shall go forth into captivity. And the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then after that take place, it says, then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the days of battle. So let's look at it when this stuff take place. Let's go down. And it shall be in that day, the living water shall go out from Jerusalem. So the Lord is telling you that he's going to fight against those nations and deliver those nations within a day. Why did this brother takes 14 and say that this is talking about 70 AD? Why does he have the right to do that? Where did he get that from? I'm gonna tell you where he got it from. Full preterists and somewhat partial preterists. That's where he got that from. So my question to this brother, what are you? Are you a full preterist or a partial preterist? Do you believe that Matthew 24 was all fulfilled and Luke is partially, or vice versa? What are you dealing with? What position in the stance do you take? Because it's clear this battle is talking about the battle of the nations against Christ, coming to save those very people is going to flee in Matthew 24. Let's go back to Matthew 24 and get some commentary. So I read to y'all some commentary. I read to y'all some historical content by Josephus. So I don't know what else that I can do besides go back to Matthew 24 and bring some things out, you know. Now watch what it says. Let's jump up. Let's jump up and look at something. Let's look at 4, and then after this we done. It says, take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of war. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet near. Is not yet. So he's talking about the end, right? Watch what he says. For nations shall rise against nations. That word is ethnos. Ethnos shall rise against ethnos. That means ethnicity or races should rise against races. That's why we're seeing that taking place right now, right? It says, and there should be famines, in other words, shortage of food, pestilence, which is all types of plagues or diseases, and earthquakes. We're seeing that happen now in diverse places, in many places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. This is the beginning of sorrows when you're seeing these earthquakes and tsunamis and race wars. Watch what it's the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and it shall kill you, and ye should be hated of all nations for my name's sake. So this is not going to happen. Not only happen to the apostles, but also after the apostles, and also to those that's going to be in the very time of these very events, because people are going to start hating this Bible, and they're going to hate that you out there teaching. They're going to beat you down, as well as how they beat them up, apostles out in many synagogues and the disciples. That's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. Look at Revelation chapter 6, what it says. The martyrs, when he tells them to wait till y'all be killed as your brothers, and those that came out of the great tribulations in Revelation chapter 7. That was in the tribulation did experience being killed as their brothers up under the 6th seal in Revelation chapter 6. Watch and look at it. They're going to experience martyrs, people getting killed and beheaded because of their testimony and what they believe on Christ and not taking the mark of the beast. It says, then shall many be offended and shall betray one another. It's going to happen in the latter days. Many are going to betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. You just seen Kevin G and other brothers, and I didn't really mention their name. These brothers spitting false prophecy and been doing it the past few nights here. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Many because of iniquity. sin. Many people are going to look at these things, and they're going to look at the cares of the world, and their love is going to wax cold. They're not going to be affectionate people. They're not going to be loving Christ or loving other people, right? But he that endured to the end, the same should be saved. It's about endurance, following the instruction of Christ, being led by the Spirit, so you can endure. And this gospel of the kingdom should be preached in all the world for a witness unto all the nations. And then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see, watch what happens when the end shall come. Watch what it says. When ye therefore shall see the abominations of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. A part of this we see happen in 70 AD, but the abomination of desolation that talked about, this spoken about Daniel, did not happen. That didn't happen. The temple was actually burned. They burnt the temple, but it was set fire, right? But it says that the abomination of desolation shall stand in the holy place, and also in 2 Thessalonians 2:4, sit in the holy place, and sit and say that he is God. And Revelations 11 confirms that about a temple, and also Daniel 9:27 confirms that about a temple, and Daniel 9 and Daniel 8:8-24 explains about the little horn that shall cause the oblations to cease and cause the abomination of desolation spoken of in Daniel. Then Matthew 24:15 is talking about. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, right? So we see that Christ is basically talking about, watch what he says. Let's jump down. Verse 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. This called Jacob's troubles. Not just in 70 AD, but Jacob's troubles. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. Except if God would never shorten those days in the past, in the future, no flesh is going to be saved. It says, but for the elect's sake, those days should be shortened. So God's going to shorten those days for the elect's sake. That if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there believe it. Lo, here is Christ, or there believe it not. For there shall rise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch as that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Remember, Revelation chapter 13, the false prophet, the beast, and the image that he made to come alive. This is what this is talking about. Watch how Christ is going to come. For as the lightning come out of the east and shineth unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. You see the sun shining already from the east to the west every day. That's how physical the Son of Christ is going to be coming with his angels, as I read in Zechariah when it says that he should come with his saints. When does this take place? To save those people that should come out of a deliverer out of Zion and turn ungodliness away from Israel. When does this take place? When the fullness of the Gentiles come in. Zechariah 14 is not talking about 70 AD. The fullness of the Gentiles did not come in yet. But those nations was gathered around them. And Romans chapter 11 tells you that he's going to come and save Israel and turn them away from ungodliness and show that he is the deliverer. Now watch what it says. 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, till the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. So immediately after the tribulation of those days, this is not talking about in 70 AD, because this is after the tribulation of those days. Watch what it says. And shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. When does that happen? Zechariah 14 tells you when it happens. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. And then they shall gather together his elect from the four winds. So his elect is gathered, right, together from all the places and brought back to the land. After he delivers Israel from those people and sets up his kingdom 1,000 years into eternity. And he's going to bring the people back unto the land, back unto their brothers that's already in the land, and rebuild a temple and cause the Gentiles to rebuild the temple from the destruction of that temple that we're going to see in Revelation chapter 11. Because he's going to come into that temple, the Antichrist, and say that he is God and sit in that temple. So it says, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So why is he saying that? He telling you, learn the parable of the fig tree. The fig tree is Israel. So when Israel's branch is putting forth leaves, right? And it seems like they blossoming and they blooming. He says, ye know that the summer is nigh. So in order for Israel to be putting forth branches, they will have to, leaves, they will have to be in the land. A portion of them will. Then he says, ye know the summer is nigh. So likewise, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Now watch what he says. But verily I say unto thee, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. What things that he's talking about? The very things when you go up at the top, when it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. So when full of preterists try to use this, you have to look and say, well, hold on, this generation have to be the generation that's going to experience all these things that shall not pass. Not the generation that we see at that point that we see that's dealing with the apostles, but it has to be the generation that's going to see the things that's spoken of in 29 when it says immediately after the tribulation of those days, and also the things up above. So we know that 70 AD, all of these things, right, that we see concerning the temple happen, but it says that immediately after the tribulation of those days should the sun be darkened. And it says in 30, the Son of Man should come, and the tribes of the earth shall mourn. That's not just talking about Israel. It says all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. That didn't happen in 70 AD. Only Israel was mourned, and they was led away captive, according to Luke, because Luke talks about them being led into all the nations in 70 AD. There was a scattering in 70 AD, not a gathering. But when you look at Matthew is talking about an event that's going to take place in the latter days, besides 70 AD, where Israel is going to be gathered and saved from the executioner or the extortioner. So that generation that is talking about that he said they won't pass will be that a generation that will see all of those things, even when you look at after the tribulation of those days, when he gathered the elect. That generation will not pass, not that generation that was in those days. So even full preterists try to be slick with that. Watch what he says. For as the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, right? So we see in the last days, that's what people is going to be doing. Not just Israel, all people is going to be doing that. And he going to come on them and cause massive destruction. That's clear. And another scripture says it's going to be as Lot in the days of Lot. That's talking about Revelations when we see it's been spiritually called Sodom. So this is clear, man. Like, let's stop playing these games and really understand what's really going on here. Zechariah 14 is not talking about 70 AD. We didn't read commentary. We didn't read historical history. I don't know what else to give unto the people. It's more that I can give, but just for time's sake, I'm just going to do this and give that. Bottom line is, y'all wrong, man. And y'all are teaching this black Hebrew Israelite eschatology, and it's wicked and it's not right. You out of pocket. You out of pocket. So let me check the chat room. Peace and blessings to the family out there. I got to end this. I definitely got to get it in and go back to work. Look at Alan Pisces. LaRon stay hating. No, I'm not hating. I'm just telling the truth. Well, you know what? If you say that that's hating, then it is what it is. Then, if that's what you want to say, it is what it is. Then, but I don't see how this brother jumped and got Zechariah 14 about that. So with that being said, I just had to slap the brother up real quick. Peace and blessings to those brothers. Man, stop teaching that black eschatology just to prove that you Israelites, and that black theology, Israel doctrine over there talking some foolishness concerning the flesh. You talking about flesh theology and flesh eschatology. That is ridiculous, man. And start teaching what the Bible said. I'm interested to hear what Israel doctrine got to say. We're gonna talk about it because I want to see if he holds that position that Zechariah 7:12 is talking about 70 AD. I want to see if he holds that position. It's gonna be interesting because now we're gonna pull out some things and see if this brother is really doing what he say that he's supposed to be doing or teaching this eschatology or but he put the black on there and then put the theology in there, just making it so ridiculous instead of just saying this is spiritual theology and spiritual eschatology coming straight from the Father above by the word of God and the Spirit performing the very deeds of those actions. Man, I was finna start flowing on y'all, man. Y'all want to see me out here, man. You know what I'm saying? Y'all want to see me out here. Peace to the brother Built for Speed, Tony Tebb, Mary Bennett. What's going on, sister? So real in the building, sister Raquel, sister Cherry, Brian Garcia. What's happening? J Man in the building. Peace to the brother Alone Pisces, whatever you say his name. Yeah, it is what it is. Leader for Christ. What's happening? Then we got who else we got in the building? Who else we got in the building? Jesus is the word. What's going on, brother? We're gonna have to get up with that brother Jesus in the word and get him on the panel and speak about some of that eschatology. Jesus is the word. Peace to you, brother. Who else we got in here? Called out Built for Speed already. What's going on? Rico Champion. What's going on? Peace and blessings. We got global media in the building. What's going on? Bold Fortress in the building. What's happening, man? Issa in the building. Ishay in the building. Clinton in the building. Kansu says Mu Amen. What's going on? I stay banging on him, man. Got to. Banging on him like Shaq. Better yet, we come down to court. Oh, man. We come down to court. We like Vince Carter when Scottie Pippen came and dunked on your boy. What's your boy name, man? I forgot his name. They looked at real silly and jumped up and got mad when Scottie Pippen came and dunked all on him. Irvin, I seen you. So we called out everybody, man. Peace and blessings to y'all, man. And I got a praise report. My daughter, her test came up pretty clear, so she good. She gravy. So, that's a good thing. She doesn't have cyst fibrosis. So we gonna definitely and do some more research on that. Peace to the brother Jay. I see you. Peace to you. Yeah, we're gonna definitely do some. Yeah, we got the test results back, so evidently we're gonna do some more stuff on it. And see, really, is we gonna. I'm gonna take a DNA test because, I really want to see what's there because a lot of times what happens is a trait will be there, and so once the trait be there, that means somebody has that trait, and so we need to look into that and see what genetically is there. Why is that? Why would it even come up? There in the first place. And look and see, because a lot of times what happens is somebody might just have the trait, but it's good to understand what you have in you, what type of mutations, genetic mutations that you have in you, and what can affect your children, because you're producing them. So if your wife got something, or your mate got something, then you got to understand what's going on with that because a lot of those things can miss a hit and it can affect your children. So You know, you got to look at that and understand it. And a lot of times when you start looking at cyst fibrosis, a lot of times that's mainly coming from either from Jews, or you're going to get it from mostly Europeans. And the reason why that is because a lot of the Jews went into European nations and took on wives, and that mutations came up. And so a lot of black people might be able to have a trait for cyst fibrosis, depending on if they have white in their in their white in their lineage. Like, for instance, the brother talked about R1B, or I think he said R1B or R1A, down there in Georgia. You know, that originates out of West Europe, and so a lot of that comes from either somewhat of the you might be due to your slave masters, or even somewhat of the Sephardic Jews, because the Sephardic Jews, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of them probably could have picked up that very trait just as well, and could have and we know in 1492 they migrated to America, as well as they had slaves just as well as too. We could see if some of those. Then they also, got up with some of the Native Americans, and took some of their women and created Jewish communities. One of them I mentioned was at Albuquerque. You know what I'm saying? Albuquerque, New Mexico, to where we have a Jewish community down there, and they didn't even know they was Jewish. They was actually Catholics. And once they did a DNA test on one of the guys, it came to find out he was his bloodline was Jew. He had the some his haplogroup. She shared some things with the Jews around the world. That we see that share some type of relationship with each other, genetically, culturally, and also historically. And we can see some of those things in the biblical text just as well too. So it's important to know what's there. Even if you say, well, I'm not doing a DNA test just to see if I'm an Israelite or not. Just see what's there, so you can understand that where, if you want to have kids, or if you don't want to have kids, just what traits you got, or what type of things is there, to where you can know, hey, there's a possibility that my child may develop this. So, like, I got certain traits that can develop into sickle cell. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? I have a trait. But if a woman came along, she had a trait, then it's a possibility. I believe that child can hit or miss, develop that just as well. So I'm just saying, if it ain't for that reason alone, just let that be. Which, I'm not the best when it comes to biology, but I do know that is important. You know what I'm saying? So all praise to the Most High, because my daughter, she doesn't have it. You know what I'm saying? But there's some other things that we want to look at and see, possibly with my sons and stuff, because my wife, she has a little snub on her finger. And when she was young, they cut it off, and it's on her left finger. My daughter came out with the same nub that's on her finger, the same thing on her finger. So you can see that it's something genetically that's there, some type of trait or something is there, to where my daughter has the same thing on her finger. It's crazy, yo. Like my wife, she inspected her and was looking and was like, wow. She said, do you see this? I'm like, what? She's like, look on her hand. And it's on the same hand. And so there's a gene for that. And so we have to look and see, well, where does this gene come from? Where did they get this trait from? And where can we find it at? Because somehow, some way, it didn't come on my sons, but it developed, with on the paternal. It seemed like it's on the maternal line for some reason. Some reason it's going through her and through the maternal line unto my daughter, and not on the paternal line, which is my line. So I just wanted to bring those things out real quick. Peace and blessings to the Most High. All praises to the Son, you know what I'm saying? The Word of God, and all power, honor, and glory, you know what I'm saying? To the Father, you know what I'm saying? For demonstrating all through the world his greatness and his power and his glory. And for sending his word, you know what I'm saying, to represent, sending his word to just show us the very image of God and what he requires of us, and to show us what it is to be a son of God. How we supposed to demonstrate as being a son of God. And Christ was the very embodiment of that. And he has you know, he has basically made us to be near God, where we was far apart from God. And he has given us the ministry of reconciliation to take that very gospel, that very message that came from the Father that he displayed, and also bring people unto God with that very message. So we are priests after the order of Melchizedek, being in the body of Christ, which was after the order of Melchizedek Christ was. And he have made us priests, kings, and as well. And we have the ministry of reconciliation. That's what a priest does. He reconciled the people back unto God. And we have the authority to do so. So we are definitely priests. And that's something that we must continue to abide in and do on a daily basis. So whether if you out there, you're a Gentile, Jew, you are a priest of God. And these priests that we see are after the order of Melchizedek. And we have the ability, right? The ability within this temple, the ministry of reconciliation, to present ourselves as living sacrifice and enter in behind the veil that was rent, that we may enter in, as well as the wall of partition that caused the Gentiles not to be able to come over to the other side and come near unto the priest and near unto God. But that separation has been broken down. And so we have the ability to come nigh unto him and to present ourselves. We present ourselves now. Christ said that we can talk to the Father now by way of the pathway of the blood of Christ. It was walked into that holy place, into behind the veils, as opened up the way that we may be able to enter in a new way and a better way up under the New Testament. Whereas the First Testament didn't allow us or grant us that access. We have access now by the Spirit of God and by the very blood. And the word bear witness to it. We have that access because that blood was shed on the mercy seat, which caused us to be nigh unto God. So those that are in Christ partook of the very death of Christ. Therefore, we are dead unto the law, which causes the separation of us from God, because we cannot do the law. But the righteousness is fulfilled in us because Christ has fulfilled the law and brought us up under the New Testament and broken down that middle wall of separation that separated us from the Father. Now are we nigh unto him. Peace and blessings to the family out there. Make sure y'all click and subscribe and share this page. Let's teach the gospel. Let's preach the gospel from a spiritual perspective and not by black theology or either black eschatology. Peace.